So here's a scene from my product page for Stratify. I've had some people ask me lately for a little bit more detail on how I use Stratify to do pattern offsets. So I thought I'd use this scene and show you a couple other scenes as well that are really simple, but you can make some interesting looking things just by using the pattern offset in Stratify. So if we take a look at all my layers, let's go ahead and select them and show the keyframes. They all have the same set of keyframes. So we're just scaling up to 110%, and then we're coming down to 100%. And we take a look at the graph editor here, it's just a nice little overshoot. Okay, so pretty simple. There are some that don't have keyframes. Let me twirl these all up. So if we take a look at like this couch here, these are all parented together, and let me solo them because I don't want these different parts of the couch coming on at different times. I want them to come on all as one object. Now I could have just pre-composed them and had a pre-comp here, but I just kept the layers and just parented to this couch front, and we get the same effect. So all I'm going to do is select all my layers then, and with Stratify I'm going to go into pattern offset, and as always we have these different patterns. Be on the lookout. I have a few more patterns coming to this, so that'll be a nice little update. Let's go ahead and do the one that was in the video. This is just outward X, so we're going to start with layers that are in the center, and then they're going to go both left and right from the middle of the comp. So we go ahead and apply it, and if we scrub through, we can see that we have our animation. Now, this part of the couch here, this back part, is just popping on, right? And so we need to go ahead and extend those layers. There's a couple different ways you can do it. I have another script called Fresh Trim, and if I just click on Trim to Parent, all these layers that have parenting, they're just going to get trimmed to match their parent layer to make sure that they come in at the same time. And so that makes it pretty easy. Another thing that you could do as well, if you don't want to use Fresh Trim, you could just go to the beginning, hit Alt left bracket, just to make sure that they are all trimmed to the start of the comp, and we get the same effect. So I'm going to undo here a couple times. Let's go back to Stratify, and let's just pick a different one. Let's go ahead and do top left to bottom right, and we'll go ahead and apply that, and we'll scrub through. And similar animation, but a little bit different. Now, sometimes you have to be careful, like if we look at this piece of furniture on here, over here on the right, things are kind of coming on in an interesting order because we're going from the top left to the bottom right. And so that might not be the look we want. We can make adjustments there. Just be aware that, you know, it's looking at the anchor point to determine where the endpoint is going to be. And so if I actually want this to come on earlier than the drawers, I could take, I'm going to hit Y on the keyboard and move the anchor point over here. Now the downside of this is since I'm using scale, it's going to scale from this point as well. So that's probably, for this scene, probably not going to be really ideal. Let me go ahead and hit undo. And for this scene, because of the way that it's set up, maybe bottom right, let's see, bottom right, top left, let's try that. And just the way that this is set up, this is a better flow for this particular scene. Now, you will notice up here, this shelf comes on after the object's on the shelf. So the way that we could fix that is we could click on the shelf, and I'm going to hit Y on the keyboard, and I'm going to move the anchor point to this side so it actually scales up from here. And now this shelf should come on before the other objects. So let's go ahead and select everything, and we'll do Alt Home. And let's go ahead and run this again. And I'm going to make sure that the parents or the children are the same length as the parents. And let's go ahead and scrub through here. And there we go. Let's do a little RAM preview. because we're coming from the bottom right here up to the top left. And so this works out really nice. Okay, so that's how I set up that particular scene. Nothing too magical there. Stratify doesn't set any keyframes because it gives you the flexibility to create your own animations and then just offset them. And let's take a look at another way you could do this. So here's a simple line. Let's go ahead and zoom out a little bit. And it just rotates. We have a little bit of an overshoot on the rotation. Okay. So how can we use Stratify to make this a little bit more interesting? So I'm going to use another script that I have called relativity. And let's go to the utility, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this line. And I'm going to do it 48 times. Hopefully this doesn't get too slow. Let's see, how many do we have across the top here? So we're going to go ahead and change this. I'm going to select all my lines here, and let's go ahead and change the top row to 8 across. So we get a nice grid, and I'm going to go ahead and create a controller so that I can actually change the spacing of these dynamically. Let's say OK. And now we need to go to our effects control, and I'm going to adjust this so that we don't have any gaps here. And let's come out here to where they're rotated, and let's adjust. Oh, let's make some adjustments here so that it looks like they're just solid lines. Okay, so there's our grid, and we're just rotating them with a little bit of overshoot. And I'm going to go ahead and lock this controller here, and I'll select all of our layers. Let's rearrange some things here. Let's go to Stratify, and let's go ahead and just apply this one that we have. And let's come out here. Let's do a little RAM preview. So here you can make some really interesting patterns with a simple animation. And if I want them to not just pop on, I can just do Alt left bracket here at the beginning so that they're already on screen. And I feel like this is a little bit more interesting here. So let me go ahead and undo that, and let's just pick a different one. Let's do radial in. And I'm going to go ahead and do Alt left bracket so that they're on screen. All right, let's look at one more technique you could do. So let's come over here, and if I make a new solid, I'm going to go ahead and use a script called Slicer. So this is RD Slicer. I believe it's free. I'll try and find it and put a link in the video description. But here we can slice our solid up into rows and columns. So since this is 9 by 16, I'm going to do 9 rows and 16 columns to give us squares within our comp here. So I hit slice. And once you do that, you can see by going through, we have a bunch of squares. And so I've already done this and set up an animation. So let's jump over to that one. If we hit U on the keyboard to show the keyframes, I keyframed the scale and rotation. So let me go ahead and solo this layer, and let's see where we're at. Let's turn off the overlays. Okay, so it just scales up and scales back down, and we have a rotation in between with a little bit of a pause right there. And so I have exact same keyframing on all my layers. So let's go ahead and unsolo this. Let's select all of our layers. Let's go to Stratify, and let's just roll with the one we have here to start with. And let's do a RAM preview. Okay, let's go ahead and try a different pattern. I think these are pretty predictable now as far as what we're going to get. Hopefully that little overview gives you a better understanding of how you can use Stratify and pattern offsets in your next project.